You can now get a 30-day trial to experience The Athletic for free. Visit the link in the description below to try it now.
A recurring theme of late has been the inability of big clubs to sell their unwanted players. Bloated squads are of course not a new problem. In the past, the likes of Barcelona, Chelsea, Arsenal and Real Madrid have all had large squads with players on big wages who don't feature all too often. The difference is, though, that in the past, smaller clubs have been happy to gobble up those surplus players and improve their own teams. Now, however, this isn't happening quite as much. Even super rich PSG, so rich that if they wanted they could afford to splice Kylian Mbappe with a lion DNA to create Kylian Mbappe. Even PSG have players they'd like to get rid of, but can't, because for some reason, and I don't want to sound harsh, these unwanted, unloved, overpriced deadwood failure footballers never leave. So why is that? Well, the first and most obvious reason is that many of these players earn a lot of money at their respective clubs and would prefer to be paid all of that money instead of less of that money. Now, this part seems fair, because imagine, if you will, that Miralem Pjanic, for example, who earns around £180,000 every week to mostly sit on the bench at Barcelona, wasn't a footballer, but instead did a normal human job like accountant. And then imagine that one day, accountant boss came into him in accountant office and said, "Hello, Miralem Pjanic. As you are aware, there are other accountants in accountant's office, and I prefer all of them to you. So I'd like if instead of living in this lovely Mediterranean seaside city of culture and working at this historic and revered accountant's office, you move to Hull. Oh, and also, you would be paid less than half of what you get now." Do you think Miralem Pjanic would be happy accountant in this scenario? I don't think he would. I think he would be sad accountant. The matter becomes more complicated when we consider how much clubs spend signing footballers in the first place, and what their transfer value is. A player's value, by definition, is what the club are willing to pay for him. Barcelona spent an initial £105 million on Philippe Coutinho, for example, with around £35 million worth of add-ons back in January 2018, and so somewhat understandably they are ever so slightly reticent to give him away for free now, even though they don't really need him. Analogy! This is like buying a table tennis table for your garden and being all excited about table tennis table before quickly realizing that table tennis table takes up far too much space, as in at least half of your garden, and that none of your friends actually want to play table tennis table with you, and that you are so bad at table tennis table that it's not even really worth beginning to try. So obviously in this scenario you would decide to get rid of the thing, but first of all, it's massive. Second, absolutely nobody else in the world or on Gumtree wants to pay money for an outside table tennis table in the middle of a cold English winter. It was a stupid idea, Joe. A stupid, stupid, stupid idea. But you don't just want to give the thing away for £20 or £10, and certainly not for free, because it cost you £105 million plus £35 million of add-ons.
The coronavirus was very bad for the market. Help me, please. Infinite pain.
Wasn't that robot boring? You see, those smaller clubs that used to buy big club offshoots are also skewing younger these days. Let's look at Arsenal as an interesting example of a bigger selling club, because they began the summer wanting to sell Granit Xhaka, but ended it by selling Joe Willock, a high-potential youngster. He went to Newcastle for the sort of fee that they were unable to attract for Xhaka, a player who used to be a high-potential youngster, but is now a proven international-level midfielder. So even though there's no guarantee that Willock will go on to be as important a player as Xhaka, he is worth more than Xhaka because he's not as old and will therefore last longer, and because his wage demands will be lower. Fruit time! It's a bit like buying mangoes, because, when you buy a mango, you want to buy the one that isn't ripe yet, because nobody ever eats a mango straight after getting home from the shop. That's insane. Instead, as normal people do, you eat the mango a few days later when you remember that you have a mango, and you should eat it before it goes off. And in this example, Granit Xhaka is a 28-year-old mango. And so you see, the reasons that clubs are unable to sell their players are numerous and varied. While there are still clubs spending money and leagues where the financial situation is better than others, there's still a finite number of homes for the cast-offs. Generally speaking, if you want to make these outgoing transfers happen at all, it's the bigger selling club who has to make the concessions, either with wage contributions, temporary loans, or with heavily reduced fees. Reduced fees? And until the ghosts of Charles Dickens' A Muppet's Christmas Carol appear to the owners of these clubs and convince them to sell for cheap because it's a nice thing to do, or indeed make the players believe that they should be paid less because the poor old billionaire oligarch who employs them wants to play table tennis or doesn't, whichever one of those makes more sense, that's the one to remember. Until then, little will change, and the likes of PSG's Julian Draxler, Barcelona's Miralem Pjanic, and Charles Dickens's Kermit the Frog will all remain trapped and rarely used at their respective clubs forevermore, or until someone just decides to pay the money and get stuck with them. Everton! That's the kind of thing that Everton would do.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do enjoy Tifo, then you'll probably also like The Athletic. If you watch our tactics videos, you should go and read Michael Cox. If you're into data, read Tom Warville. And if you're into transfers, it's David Ornstein. Plus, if you're a fan of any Premier League team, then there's a journalist dedicated to you, and you can try it for free for 30 days now by clicking the link in the description.